Hey everyone, it's Holly with Suave Knits. Welcome back to my channel. Today I'm going to be recreating this top. Here she is. So this top was originally inspired by a dress called the Shanaz dress. This dress is $1,800, which is just insane. After I finished creating the top half, I was only planning on doing the top half for this video anyway, but then I realized that they actually have a version of the dress as just a crop top for $700. So basically the whole idea of this video is that I recreated this $700 top for just $12. Which is insane to think about, and now I have this beautiful top that I can wear. This video is really just going to take you through my process of recreating the dress. This is absolutely not a tutorial. I'm definitely not going to be releasing a pattern on this either. I just feel like it's a little bit weird to kind of take another designer's idea and just completely rip it off and sell the pattern as my own. So this video is really just focusing on my process. That being said though, I feel like if you are a strong crocheter, you could definitely watch my video and kind of figure out on your own how you would want to recreate it yourself. So I do think there is enough guidance that if you are a strong crocheter, you could still recreate the look. And one other thing I wanted to talk about before we dive into the video is just that I use this lovely cotton yarn from Premier Yarns for my top. And what you'll notice throughout the video is that there are a lot of yarn joins, and that's 100% on me, because before I started filming, I actually spent a week kind of like messing around and figuring out what I wanted to do to start this top. And a lot of that was cutting yarn and joining it somewhere else and all of this mess. And I loved this color so much that I didn't really want to just give up on the color and use a different one. So that kind of ended with me having a lot of yarn joins. And that again was 100% me. So if you're considering purchasing this yarn, I just want you to know, if you watch my video and you're like, oh my God, I'm not gonna buy that because there's so many yarn joins, that was me. That was not the yarn. So that being said, let's dive on in and get started with my process. I used 2 balls of Premier's Cotton Sprout DK in Cadet. I used a 3mm crochet hook, and I started by untangling all of the yarn from all of my failed attempts before starting filming. Thankfully though, I got it all untangled. Next up, I did a little slip knot, and I started out by chaining 4 stitches. Once I had my 4 stitches, I joined it to create a little tiny circle where I could put all of my double crochets in. I started out chaining 3 stitches as my first double crochet, and then I went ahead and did 11 more double crochets into the circle. If you count 3 chains at the beginning, that would be a total of 12 double crochets. For the spiral, instead of joining this first row in the round with a slip stitch, you just go right ahead and start doing 2 double crochets into every stitch, and I do this through the back stitch here. That's so that when we finish the round, there's like a nice little clear, distinct spiral that you'll be able to see. So I went ahead and just started going through and doing all of the different rows. I did this on my exercise bike, which was super awesome because I got a lot of exercise from it. However, I did end up getting the yarn all tangled up, but thankfully I got it untangled like I did before. And I rode my bike for 20 minutes to finish 1 spiral. Do that times 3, and I rode my bike for a whole hour, which was a lot of great exercise. And then you can see how beautiful the spiral turned out. And I placed a stitch marker in my last stitch and left it active because we're gonna need that for later. Even though the spiral that I created by crocheting into the back loop was kind of defined, I wanted to make it a little bit more defined. So I went ahead and did kind of a slip stitch through each one of those little ridges that was left in the spiral. So kind of that mark where you can see I crocheted through the back stitch, it left this pattern of the spiral, and that's where I did all of my slip stitches. And I felt like doing this would create a spiral that was a little bit more defined than just crocheting through the back loop. This was important to me because I felt like the piece really emphasized the spirals, and I wanted to make that a huge part of the piece. And you can see I have a little bit of a yarn join right there, and that is just from where I tied it to my starting yarn because I didn't want to weave it in at the end. So I just kind of tucked that in at the end. But I went ahead and just crocheted through the entire piece and just left the yarn kind of active at the end because I wanted to start the next part with the loop from that little spiral slip stitch area. So what you can see is that I am going from this point and kind of joining the yarn at the end of the spiral, and then I am chaining 42 stitches, which is just an arbitrary number that I felt like would be enough to fit around my torso. After I finished, I did a single crochet round all the way from the start of that chain row all the way down to the spiral. After I got back to the spiral, I did single crochets across the spiral, keeping with the curve of the spiral. So I believe that was about 1 single crochet every 3, and then on the 4th, single crochet into 2. This will maintain the curve. So I did this for about 12 stitches for a total of 15 stitches, since every 4th you're crocheting 2. And then once I finished the last stitch, I did another 42 chains at the end. Once I finished that, I circled back and did another single crochet row. And once I got back to the spiral, I just kind of joined it and tied off the yarn. So now I have these little jellyfish tentacle looking things, and I know they aren't much, but they look really cute to me. And I actually have 3, I'm not showing the 3rd here. This is how it's gonna sit, kind of at the end, and it doesn't fit around my body completely, but I end up fixing that at the end. So now I'm starting from that active stitch that I left, and I'm going to be doing double crochet all the way down the end, back, circling around, all the way to the other side and back to the spiral. So this part was very long because I had to do it on both sides, and I was trying to keep up with both sides throughout this whole process so I wouldn't forget what I did and make the other side uneven. It definitely took a long time, and I tried to film myself crocheting and ultimately ended up with a very, very blurry video of me, which kind of looked artistic in a way, so I decided to keep it in. Once I finished with the double crochet though, I needed to kind of taper off, so I ended with the double crochet and I did a half double crochet, and then I did a single crochet, and then a slip stitch before I bind it off and tied off my yarn right here. Gizmo has been working overtime in quality assurance, and by the looks of his face, I'd say he is thoroughly impressed by how I've been doing. And look, now I have 2 much larger tentacles that I'm waving around. It still doesn't quite fit around my entire body. I definitely misgauged it, but don't worry, I fix it later. With crochet, you can do anything. Looking good though. So for the next part, the mirror image piece really comes into play. So I put a little stitch marker on opposite sides that are going to kind of fit together. So you can kind of see I'm flipping it around, doing a lot of weird things, just trying to figure out how is this gonna fit on my body. So I'm starting where that little stitch marker is on both, and one side is wrong side up and one is right side up. Yeah, I'm pointing, we all get the idea. It's confusing, but it definitely worked for the piece. For this next row, I started at the part where I marked with my stitch marker, and I did a row of double crochets. Once I reached the spiral section, I would do 4 double crochets, and then on the 5th double crochet, I would put 2 double crochets in each stitch. This was to maintain the curve around the spiral, and then once I got back to the straight area, I just finished up with a bunch of double crochets. I genuinely thought that this top was only going to take one day, and I'm still about one day into filming here, but it really ended up taking so much more time than I thought. I think I overestimated how fast I am as a crocheter, which apparently is not that fast at all. All of these videos are sped up. So next I started by marking where I wanted the breast coverage to be on the top, and I kind of evenly marked it on both sides, and the red kind of indicates where I'm going to start tapering down, because each row is going to kind of loop around and then kind of go back and forth like I'm pointing. So you can see I spent a lot of time crocheting with Gizmo on the couch, and then once I finished that row, it was starting to look pretty good. You can see I held it up to the camera and it looks pretty nice after I finished that first double crochet row, and then I wanted to start tapering where that red was, which I did that kind of half double crochet, the single crochet, and then here I did 2 single crochets before I kind of looped back around and did a single crochet, a half double crochet, and then a double crochet just to kind of give it that slant upward. On my next row coming back around, I went all the way to the end of where my first taper was, and then I tapered off the same way with a half double crochet, a single crochet, and then 2 slip stitches, and then I turned my work and then did a single crochet, half double crochet, and then a double crochet. Here you can see how I did my tapering, and it's a little bit confusing, but where I started, I marked the red and the pink, which are my first rows of tapering. And basically I would always start on those rows with my half double crochet, single crochet, 2 slip stitches, and then come back around, and then on the next row after that, I would start my taper at the end of the first taper. And then I would come back around, and then it would be time for the next one. I repeated this on the other side, which took a long time crocheting. By this point in the day, I was already visiting my parents and of course all of the ducks that live right next to their house. I got some cute videos of me crocheting next to the ducks, and they proved to not be much of a distraction at all, and I finished up both sides pretty quickly. But on day 2, I decided to model what I had so far, and you can see it's starting to take a lot of shape. And then I grabbed my 3rd spiral, which I have been hinting that I have, and you can kind of see how it fits. It looked really good, and now I wanted to start kind of going around with one more crochet row. So I did this kind of in my parents' guest room, which is so aesthetic and so appealing. I couldn't help myself but jump on the bed and just kind of veg out and relax while I crocheted the rest of my top. This is what I have so far, and I plan on adding a double crochet row in between the yellow and the red on each side to kind of give it a little bit more volume in between the 2 panels. This is how it looks after I added that double crochet row, and it was very important to make sure that I started at the same point and stopped at the same point on both sides so it would be even. Next, I wanted to sew those 2 together just with a basic little mattress stitch, and then I sewed on that 3rd spiral that I have been hinting that I have this entire video. After I got those all sewed together, I also wanted to sew together the back, so the bottom part of the back fit my back perfectly fine, but the top part of the back was a little bit too tight, so I added a few rows of double crochet, which I then made look a little bit prettier afterwards, because you can see this kind of looks a little bit ugly as is, but that ended up not being a problem at the end because I added a nice little border. This is how it looked when I tried it on, and honestly, the fit was pretty good. I wasn't too mad about it. I just needed to add a little bit right above the belly button to kind of make it look a little bit more like the photo. And then I also planned on adding a border around all of the edges just to clean it up a bit. At this point, it's day 3. I'm back at my apartment with Gizmo and adding that little extra piece above the belly button just to kind of make the top look a little bit more like how it looked in the photo. I think having that extra little piece above the belly button will be helpful, so if I ever decide to finish the skirt, it will actually have something to attach to and will look proper. This is how it ended up looking at the end. I ended up adding about 2 rows of double crochet and kind of doing that tapering technique again. I ended up adding the rows in the direction that I'm pointing my finger, so I started in the middle and looped back around to the middle. This is how it's looking overall. All that's left is really to add that rib around the edge. Overall, I feel like the top was pretty difficult to accomplish. It did take a lot of time, and of course I'm on day 3 now as I'm filming, and I expected it to only take 1 day, especially since I spent about a week preparing for the video itself. So it was definitely a challenging crochet, but overall I am very happy with the finished result. I would go back and change a few things if I could. I think my straps were a little bit too short around my neck compared to the original, and the spiral at the top is a little bit smaller on mine. But overall, I was just kind of burnt out with crocheting and I was just ready to be done. But I think overall, if you look at the photos side by side, they do look pretty similar. Definitely the quality of mine is a little bit lower, but overall, I'm still pretty happy with it. It was just a very intense process to go through. Oh, okay, I need a drink after that. Okay, so let's talk about this top. This was very, very hard to just kind of randomly go in with no instruction and just try to recreate this. It was very difficult, and I would say that the fit is definitely not perfect. However, I will say when I look at pictures of the dress versus the crop top online, and I've found some people on Instagram who have tagged the company wearing the top, it does seem like the crop top version does kind of ride up like mine does. You can kind of see here, like, it's riding up and the spirals are just kind of poofing out. But if I were wearing the dress version, it would kind of be more down like this. And there'd be that kind of circle right here. So I think with the middle circle, it would keep this top a little bit more in position. Versus now, I feel like when I'm wearing this, I have to constantly be like pulling it down and, you know, adjusting. And then also with crochet, it's like that's kind of see-through. But I do have some kind of removable bathing suit cup tops like in here right now. So you can't say anything, okay? But I think overall, while this was fun, I definitely need a little break from crochet. I need to get back to some knitting because it's just, crochet is just so chaotic to me. It's just, you know, you got all these stitches all over the place. You can add 2 stitches into 1 stitch, and it's cool because you can do weird things like this spiral. I mean, I have no idea how you would do a spiral like that in knitting without just imploding. But in crochet, it's just like so chaotic, and trying to keep the 2 sides the same while also being mirror images of each other. It was just so difficult. And by the time I finished, and I really genuinely thought that it would take me 1 day once I sat down and I was like, all right, 1 day, this is going to be one and done. And it ended up taking me 3 days, not including kind of my initial week-long prep before I even started filming. So overall, it was definitely a difficult crochet project. I think even though I've been crocheting longer than I've been knitting, for me knitting has been like the primary focus, so I'm not as strong in my crochet, which definitely I think kind of shows in this. But, you know, overall, I am proud of myself that I finished and that I'm going to be wearing it. I will say just one last kind of wrap up on this. I will not be selling these tops. If I did, it would be way more than $700. I can tell you that. So it's probably cheaper to get it from the designer because there's no way I'm making this for less than $700. It was way too much work. And I'm, again, not going to be selling a pattern. So just keep that in mind, you know, moving forward. This video is kind of the only instruction that I will be putting out there. But overall, I had fun, and I hope that you guys enjoyed this video. If you made it this far, hey, thank you so much for watching. I have a lot of really fun videos that I have planned, kind of keeping with this idea of finding high-end designer clothes and recreating them. So hopefully, you know, this is something that interests you. I think this is kind of the direction I'm going to start going in for now on YouTube. And then maybe I'll sprinkle in some, you know, just random knitting videos, maybe tutorials if that's what you want. But just make sure you please leave a like, a comment, subscribe to my channel, and especially if you want the skirt, if you want me to finish the whole dress, please let me know, because as much as this top made me want to pull my hair out, I would be happy to finish the bottom if enough people want to see it. So stay tuned for that, and for now, thank you so much for watching. Bye.